Hey everybody, so we're still muddling through validation. So I guess what I need to do today, so basically what I did yesterday was I sort of changed the way I do this validation from sort of being completely programmatic to having this sort of structure at the beginning. And the more I think about it, the more I like this. I don't know if I'm going to like it once it's all done and once there's dozens of these things, but right now I really like it a lot. So what I want to do is create a function that expects one of two things. Expects basically a whatever these are. So basically a validation type. And returns the validation for that validation type. So get a validation function for that validation type. So um, get validation for type, and basically it's going to accept a. I'm just going to call it a type at the moment, and it is a validation type. Oh my gosh. What am I doing wrong here? I validation types, and it's going to return. I don't know what this is. This is. I'm just going to say a string for the moment. It's not going to be a string, but I'm hoping that I can get Angular to just tell me what it is. It's like, tell me what it is. And then man, this is just getting more and more abstract the farther I get deeper into this. So return this dot validator. And now it's gonna be like, hey, this string is not assigned. Okay. It's like that's not a string, bro. Okay. Now I only want to send that. Um, let's see. How do you do that? Can I put this inside of quotes? I don't know. Inside of this, inside of parentheses, or no. And then basically I want to say if type. I have no idea if this is a good idea, guys. I do not know. Is equal to um, white positive float. Then we want to return this. Okay, I'm going to say const val is equal to null. And then now I'm just going to call it result. I think val is a bit confusing. Result is not like a very useful name, but it's at least not completely and utterly confusing as val would be. This dot get floating value, and then we're going to return result. And it's upset that is not that I didn't strongly type that thing. And basically we want it to be like that. So we're either going to return a number or null. We're going to assign this. Now what is your problem? Oh, did I make it a const? Maybe that's the only problem. I wonder. Oh, it's perfectly happy with that. I'm going to do this just in case. I mean, just because, it's kind of future proofed. I think that's fine. Um, so now we're saying, hey, if the type is positive float, return this positive float value. And if not, then return that. Okay, so now I've done a ton of coding, not really by volume, but like by time. A lot of coding that for code that I haven't even tested in any way, shape, or form, used at all. So now I'm going to go to my scene manager, and basically I want to get the value type. So, and I don't think I have. Do I have a reference to my? Yeah, I do not have a reference to the validation service. So let's go ahead and let's do that first. So basically, we have something called a UI validation service. Um, I don't see any reason not to give the component access to the validation service. Um, and the validation service is the one that knows how to take a token and get a validation type for it. Okay, so here's where we get the type. Yeah, so it's going to get the type. And then let's see. Actually, now I'm questioning myself. Okay, so let's go to the UI. So what the question is like, do I want to access the validation service directly from the component, or do I want to go through the UI? And I don't see any problem with going straight from the component to validation service, but it might be like a little more reasonable to go through the UI, and that's the UI validation that's sitting in Toolbox. So let's see, I thought I put it right here in this, yeah, in this services, UI validation service. So yeah, so I see this is the guy that knows how to make a validation floating point validation validator. So he doesn't. Okay, so he needs to accept the token, right? So he's going to accept the token and get this validation token, right? Right now, validation is directly, but like, well, actually, he doesn't get called unless. Oh Lord. Okay, so yeah. So basically, okay, the problem is the component knows what it wants. So it doesn't even care about any of that token stuff or anything like that. It knows it wants a positive floating point validator. So all of that stuff was pretty much useless from the component's perspective. The component doesn't, well, yeah, because, okay. Ugh, ugh. Okay. So what I'm struggling with here is, should the component, should this code that does this scene stuff, should it have a generic way of determining what validators it needs? Right? Like, or should it have to, yeah, that is weird. No one, gosh, this stuff is so weird. Um, okay, so the component, should it have a generic way to go and say, hey, this is who I am, what are my validators? Or should it know what it is? And I think it should have to. I think it should have to. Um, it should have to figure that out. I mean, it should be generic. It shouldn't be the fog density validators. Um, so right now, what I do is I say that the fog density validator is, it's an array, and then I get from the validation the floating point, the generic positive floating point validators. And I have a function that if I tell it what it's, yeah, so this, okay, if I tell it what it is, it'll do that. So I think I need, man, see, this is the problem when you don't know what you're doing. When you don't know what you're doing, when you don't have experience with something, it takes a long time. So basically what I need to have, um, this is for all form items. And so this needs to be, it, this needs to be gotten whenever for that token. And that token, okay, so the component knows, what does the component know? The component knows where it's at, right? The component here knows that it's in fog density. It knows that it's in fog density, and it knows that it's a scene, right? Um, so here we want to get the token, get validation token for fog density. Okay, and I don't know whether we want to get that from directly from the validation service or if we want to get that from the UI validation service. And then once we have that, we want the validator function. Use token to get validator function. And then that's when this will get called, because this won't get called directly. It'll be like get validator for token. So inside this UI validation, we're going to say get validator for token. Because we don't have any idea what what it's going to be. We don't have any idea, like for other imports and other things that use validations, we don't know. But we do know this one will. And basically, we're going to take a path. Okay, so get validator for token. Okay, that's one thing we want to do. And then we also want to get token. I think that's what we want to do. I think we want to call that from here. So in effect, we will isolate the component from that. So this is going to take our path array. It's going to be very, very similar to this validation service, like that. It's going to be just like this. And see, this is the thing, is like you, this is not like when you're working at a job, this is not when you should be learning this kind of stuff. This is the kind of stuff that you should be learning on your own and experimenting with on your own personal projects. And then when you go to your job, you're like, oh, okay, then you can make a really good argument on why things should be done. But anyway, so this is just going to pass that path on to the validation service. So I can actually probably write that out. Actually, I'm not going to, because I'm at 16 minutes. So yeah, so this is going to return that, and then get validation for token is going to then return one of these things. See, so, and it's going to basically say, hey, if I get this token, and then everything that matches up with that path will get a token back, and then everything with the specific token will get these. So we will be good from here on out. So I don't know if that's the best way to do that, but that's the path I'm going down. This is so darn abstract. I don't like the abstract nature of it, but I do like the idea that when I say get token for path and validation service, that I'll look up here and I'll say get validation for type. Is that right? Oh yeah, type is equal to plus. Okay, so I probably won't even use this function, right? Because is that right? I don't know. Now that I think about this, maybe I'll be passing the type up and getting this function, and then in my where are you? UI validation service, it'll always be like this. No, because see, this is very, yeah, so I think that I will have my own get function for type. I'll basically have my own mimic and of that function. And I don't know if I'll ever even use this function up here. Maybe I shouldn't have even implemented this get validation. Get validation for type. Maybe I shouldn't have even ever mimic that. Maybe I just want to get validation type, and then I'll take care of that. I'll have this exact function, get validation for type, over there. And then that will return the right thing. So I'm actually just going to comment this out. Oops. It's control comment, right? Control. Okay. And then just say function is probably see, this is probably something that this should be handled. And then I'm not sure about that because, okay. Yeah, I think it is, because the thing is that let's see. I think Yeah, I think this. Okay, so this layer of. So I'm going to get the type, and then the type, based on the type, the UI validation is going to come down here and figure out that it needs this, right? But if so, let's say I do an import from Word or from CSV, um, and then or a JSON import, and I have some other process that's getting that. Um, do I want that other process also doing something similar to? Let's look at UI validation service. Something similar to get validators for type for token. And do I duplicate that code? Because, okay, so I'm going to get a token for the path, okay? And I think it makes sense for the other one to get a token for a path. It makes sense for any kind of, if I have 10 different kinds of loaders and different things, it makes sense for all of them to do their get token for path, right? Like they have to figure out how to look at whatever it is they're importing or interrogating and then create a path. So that's that. And that makes sense. They're the only ones that would be able to do that. Now, get validator for token. I think that totally makes sense, at least in this case, for this thing to figure it out itself because and only because this is so unique. This is very, very unique to um, to that. Now, it may not be like, let's say I'm doing an import and I'm importing from CSV, and then I have another importer and that's importing from JSON, right? Like it may make total sense for both of them to have the same routine that figures out what the validation is, and that validation may be very generic, but this validation for this is still very, very specific. So I think it makes sense um, for this logic and this logic that says, hey, if it's this token, then this is the validation. And then I think it would make sense that if I had 5 or 6 different other things that pull in things, um, like let's say I had an STL. Let's say I do some sort of STL magic, and I'm going through there and I'm figuring out, okay, this STL is a sphere, and I'm going to get this validation for this sphere, um, and the sphere radius is a floating part, and so I want to validate that it's still a floating part and floating point. And yeah, yeah, I think that this is a one-off. I think this one has to be on its own. I think other things may not have to be on their own, and maybe they can all have a shared set of things, but I think this one has to be on its own. Um, so, but I'm not sure. I may grow to regret that in the future. Anyways, happy coding. Bye.